and we can pull up the meeting notes. All right, so those that maybe don't have access to the notes, I'll drop the link in the chat. All right, so if you could add yourself to the attendance list, please, that would be great, just to know who's here. And are there any new members joining us today for the first time? All right, great. So maybe we will start off with the requirements document that Kay was leading. We'll work through a few of those items, and then we will go on to a few of the other things that were on the GitHub.
Okay, that sounds like a transition to me, probably.
Yes, please. Sounds great.
All right, good. Let's see. Let me. I can drop in a link to the requirements document, and I can also share my screen. All right. Okay. Can you see that?
Not yet.
I had this trouble previously.
And I'll take a look if you are a presenter or what, and maybe we need to change that up.
Yeah, still can't see it, Kay.
Okay, I'm making you an attendee. Let's see if that works.
Okay. Let me try again.
And now I'm going to make you a presenter. So let's see if that works.
Okay. Okay, it says I'm a presenter. Go back to that window. The feeling this is work. Instead of outlining the entire window, I just get a small square box. Well, I ran into this before, and I never was able to get it fixed. I think I had to reboot, which I could do, or we could have someone else share the document, and I can, work on editing as we're talking.
Yeah, let's see if that will work. I will try it out.
Okay.
All right, can you all see all of my many tabs?
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. So Kay, you can take it from here, and I will try to remember not to click on anything.
Okay. All right, great. So now, so what I have done, I shared this in our last meeting, and at that point, I didn't have any content in it. I just had a framework where we were taking a look at all 3 projects: the best practices badge, security metrics, and security scorecards. And for each one, we wanted to have a look at goals, scenarios, or use cases, and then requirements. And the idea for all of this is to see at the end of it if there are some common goals and scenarios across all of these, and let this kind of help guide us to where we may use a common infrastructure, or maybe some of these things will merge sooner or later, so that we have one thing instead of 3, but we'll start off by understanding the goals for each one. Does that make sense? Comments on that?
That
Did
sounds
we?
good.
Okay. When I look at the presenters, do we have Kim Lewandowski or Dan Lawrence with us today?
Yeah, I think we're both in here.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you. Okay.
Here, just shuffling kids out the door. So,
all right, great. I just wanted to make sure we had you here when we talked about security scorecards. So let's start with CII best practices badge. So, and David's put some information here, and then Jonathan had some comments as well. So, David, do you want to talk us through this, and then
Sure.
people can ask if they have questions?
Yes, indeed. Step one, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, good. The one of the catchphrases for 2020, I'm sure.
Can you hear me?
Okay, so if you scroll down to the goals, CII best practices section, I didn't try to make this long. I tried to make it short and hopefully straightforward. I'm going to claim that the goals here for the CI best practices badge are, encouraging projects to follow best practices, help them discover what they are, and help users know which projects are following best practices so that users can prefer those who are those projects which are doing best practices. Somebody asked, hey, why is this help for number 3? Don't we want users to know what those best practices are? I actually am not so sure about that, because the question is, what is a user? If a user is another developer, I would want them to know what best practices are, but that's already covered by 2. If the users are end users, the reality is that end users frankly don't care what best practices are. I don't care why the car works. I bought a car, I want it to drive in the morning. That's it. They don't really want or need to know the details of version. They don't want to know what version control is. They don't care. They really don't. They just don't care. So I'm intentionally using help users know which projects are following best practices quite intentionally, because I think what they only care about is this reasonably likely to not bite me in the morning? Is this going to work? Is this likely to work? Is it likely to not have serious security problems? And that's what I'm trying to aim for, at least 4.3. So scenarios, use cases, next. I can only see the first one here, but Alice leads a project. She discovers, I'm using Alice, Bob, and so on. So Alice discover, once, and these are basically follow from those 3. So these are really just expansions. She wants to know what the best practices are and apply them, because she wants to have a good project or be participating as part of a good project. Number 2, Bob is on the other side, the ingest side. Bob's writing software. He wants to bring in one of maybe several different projects that seem to do kind of what he wants, but it's not clear which one he wants. So he wants to prefer one that are following good practices. So he's looking for metrics to help him figure that out. So the best practices badge gives him a quick way. Oh, look, they're following best practices, and I know what I know that immediately that tells me they're doing version control, they're doing testing, they're doing a whole lot of things. See, Charles, and I guess this is not this is kind of something a little different. It's actually probably this group. Charles is developing a dashboard, show the status of many open source software projects. So, wants to have wide scale display. Look at maybe some overall trends about open source software in general. So wants to know not just about one project, but many projects. And maybe even figure out which projects need some help. Let's see here. Was that? I guess. Okay. Next. So at least from the CII badges, original notion and point of view, and what's trying to accomplish, simple way to input data, automated where possible. This is actually probably a big difference between what some folks here are interested in, both here and actually also in chaos, talking about metrics. We actually went backwards and started first with what's the information we need, and then if we can automate that measurement, great. But we cared more about whether it was important, not whether or not it was easy to automate. So, for example, we heard loud and clear when we were doing a survey of this years back that one of the big problems people are having was, what is the project supposed to do? Give me one sentence summary. What is this thing? And it was very, very difficult to even figure out questions like, should I care about this project? Does this meet my needs? We've not found really good way to automate that, but it still seems awful important. So getting data, automating where we can. Simple display of a progress of a badge, and simple way to extract data about a project. And I will note that basically the way we do number 3 is a very, very simple REST API. And also for the badge itself, we have just a simple URL where people can just quickly get the badge, and it's on Fastly, so there's no problem with lots and lots of people viewing that. So I didn't try to make it long. In fact, I tried to make it short, but with enough information to talk about. Questions?
Yeah, I think you did a good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, just the right amount of content there. A couple of quick questions. So there's a scenario that for Microsoft that we're interested in, which is that we want to be able to gate which open source software we use based on security information, security metrics or the posture of the security posture of a
Right.
project.
Sure.
And I think that the best practices badge, that could be something that we could use. Are there on the number 3, the simple way to extract data? Are there customers that are using that API today? And
yes, yeah. There's well, I mean, CNCF is probably the best known. The CNCF actually has the passing badging criteria as a graduation requirement. So they have multiple levels. When you first come in, it's called incubator. It's what it sounds like. I mean, it might be more a dream in somebody than working code. Presumably there's something, but it's the notion of incubators. It's you're getting started. You're getting people working together. Excuse me. Oh, gracious.
Bless you.
Thank you. Allergies have not gone away from COVID. So basically to graduate from, I think that's what they call it, graduate status. And my apologies, I talk with them many times. It's just flown my mind right now what their title is, but the next stage up, in order to get that next step up, they have to achieve at least a passing badge. And that means things like they've got automated tests and version control and all these other things that are requirements. They have to fix any vulnerabilities if they're publicly known within a certain amount of time. Yeah, so absolutely, people do that. They have a dashboard. There's actually a number of Linux Foundation projects, and this actually reminds me, Kay, I was probably going to talk to you and/or the tools folks, because the LF has this tool called the landscape for identifying many projects when it's starting to get difficult to figure out, who fits where. I don't know if that's metric that this group really has a need for that, but I think the tools folks very much might. The CNCF certainly does. If you go to landscape.cncf.io, I believe. Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
I've seen that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, let's see. You're looking at the card mode. Why don't you click on landscape mode, which is just, it's a little overwhelming, but that's okay. So what you see right there is, oh my gosh, look at all those different things. But notice they're organized by different categories. The CNCF intentionally has many different projects that fit in different bins, as it will. And so this lets you see right away where they fit in. And let's see here. If you go back to card mode, it's probably easier to zoom in a little bit. I don't know, pick on container D or something like that. Yeah, so if you look look to the left a little bit further down, let's see, under container D, the third button down. No, yeah, there you go. Best practices. And you click over there and oh, look. Okay, but you'll notice, see, you see the little image, the best practices patching. If you go backwards one, so go back step one. No, you're just, yeah, there you go. If you'll see this image right here, this is a dashboard that's extracting data from, among other things, the CII best practices badge. It's actually extracting it from multiple places and bringing it in. So they've got a dashboard that pulls data from other places, including the CII best practices. And, we work with them and that sort of thing. And so absolutely, other people do create dashboards and yank the data in. Okay.
Okay.
So, I mean, there's others, but I mean, that's at least a reasonable example of that kind of thing. And people can actually pull in not just the passing status, but actual answers of specific questions and so on if they want to.
All right.
Okay, thank you very much. Other questions? Or follow-up? I'm sorry, if you had a K follow-up question, my apologies.
Nope, that's good. Thanks, David.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm going to mute myself.
Okay. All right. And so for security metrics, I know Ryan is out, and I didn't get, he's on vacation. It looks like he or someone might have put some information in here. Jennifer, are you comfortable walking us through this? Okay.
Yeah, definitely. So as many of you know from earlier in this group, we've been looking a lot at security metrics and creating both a dashboard and an API to display relevant security metrics about a given open source tool. So really what we're trying to do is collect where possible or otherwise compute some of the metrics that we think are most important and to display them in a way that really empowers the user of our dashboard to understand different things that are affecting an open source project's security posture. So some of the scenarios that have been defined include if you're simply an open source developer yourself and you want to understand how secure your project is, and to understand also some of the dependency risk and the security posture of those dependencies, this dashboard project can help you. Alternately, if you are an organization that wants to understand the security risk related to open source components that you may use within your organization, you can make informed decisions by abstracting out security data about projects by looking at the dashboard. So either through some of the well-designed visuals that Ryan's been working on, you can initially get kind of an intuitive feel from the color coding and other things that we're using around how secure in general a project is, but also you can dig deeper into different things that contribute to security risk to understand what's driving that, because maybe those factors, you weigh them differently in your organization than another organization might. So being able to drill in deeper and really inquire into that data, what is affecting the security posture and why? Another scenario that we would consider is if you are a security researcher and you want to better understand the security posture of critical components and to share those learnings with people in the community. So I think that this is a very diplomatic way of saying figuring out what is a good research target ultimately. So if you're able to take a glance as a researcher at a variety of different open source projects and get an idea as to how well maintained they are from a security perspective, whether they do things like try to implement cryptography or whether they're using low-level languages, or alternately, if they're using memory-safe languages, we get indications in a different direction. So this helps the security community who may want to look for vulnerabilities and help us improve these projects intuitively start to understand a few of the basics that can guide whether it's an interesting target of inquiry for them. And we talk about this with respect to security posture, but you could also talk about this with respect to impact. So if we get to visualize transitive dependencies, which has been one of the hot topics within this group and is probably not the MVP of this project, but a little further down. If we're able to help people inquire into and understand transitive dependency risk, as a security researcher, that's very appealing because it lets you understand the impact of a vulnerability were you to find one in a given project. And then relatedly, within this open source security foundation, there's the group called Securing Critical Projects, and they want to identify high-risk projects. So that's all we have here. I can definitely talk more about what we're doing. What I don't have, and we'll have to wait on Ryan when he's back, is a demonstration of the user interface as he's designed it, because I think it's really great.
So if I can jump in for a moment, I had a conversation, and I think it was with Ryan. My apologies if it's not. I've had so many conversations with so many people last month. It's getting to be a little bit of a blur. But there was basically a discussion of how to integrate between, and basically, the CI best practices badge. Of course, it's got a simple REST API. You call it. And in fact, we after some discussions, I made some changes to make it even easier to integrate this CI best practices badge into this. And I think there was basically a discussion that we made some little tweaks to make it even easier to integrate data from the CI best practices badge into this. And conversely, I can make changes in the CI best practices badge so that it points off to this, and he can get data from it. And so basically, without even trying to merge any code bases or anything, make it so that that each can get data from the other, and each could point off to the other as appropriate.
Yeah, and that makes a ton of sense to do something like that, especially since these groups are working together. But even if they were more separated, it would make sense to try and do that where we can.
Sure.
I guess in the spirit of that, the way that we can think of the relation between the two projects is that this security metrics piece is probably a superset of the projects that are impacted. So you can use this dashboard to see things that include projects that have already gone through the best practices, and they'll probably score a heck of a lot better. On the flip side, you can also take a look at projects that have definitely done the exact opposite of the best practices, and you will see a very different looking dashboard. So what's nice about this is I imagine that such a dashboard could be used as a way to encourage the type of security behavior and maintenance that we like to see, and also to educate people, because a lot of times when these things happen, it's not intentional, it's just a lack of awareness in how to improve. So really, we're hoping that this will help make very clear specific ways of improving and encourage that behavior by resulting in a higher score and better metrics on the dashboard, but also with the connection of it to the best practices badge. I imagine that it will drive a lot of maintainers who haven't been through the best practices program to go into that and try and achieve that badge, given the impact that it would have on their overall score.
Do we have a so for someone who is wants to be a customer of the data, how do we? So there's some options we could say, pull in, so it sounds like we'll have two separate. We'll have separate APIs for both. So would we? Let's say that as a customer, I wanted to get started doing something sooner. I guess what I could do is start using the best practices API today because it exists, and then in the future, would we, what's our message to those customers? So in the future, begin using the security metrics API because that will have the best practices information in it. Just thinking of what the customer story is,
Yeah.
maybe, and I'm not sure if we've thought about that yet.
I don't know if this is a great way to answer the question, but I think it's The way I would look at it, at least with the current state of development of things, I would say if a best practices badge exists, that's great, because then you know as the customer that you have at least some certain assurance level of security. In the absence of any best practice badge existing on a given project, you currently have to assume that the security is something like 0. And as more metrics are available through like this project for an arbitrary project, then you are able to start to compare those.
I would guess I would answer it slightly differently, which I think it's the right kind of question to ask. But I would like to make it so in some sense it doesn't matter. You basically start at one or the other, and you quickly get the information that you need, and from there, wherever you start, you quickly get the information you need. If I'm a developer, I would probably want them to start moving on fix any problems that you know you have that are serious, and start working on best practices. That's probably even parallel. I'm not sure that the one or the other is not exclusive. If you're an end user, you probably want to know, are they following best practices, and what are the metrics? You'd really like to see both be good. I mean, you can follow good practices, but for example, you've got this huge train of technical debt of historical problems, and even if you're doing great things today, that trail from the past is still going to cause you trouble. So having both sets of information, I think, is very helpful.
Yeah, I was thinking of it from the perspective of a consumer who wants to automate their consumption of OSS and gauge
Right.
it based on data in one or the other of these systems.
Right. I have to admit, I would be worried about gating purely on various numbers. I mean, I would gate more in terms of, a human makes a decision, and what information can we provide a human to help them make good decisions. But with that caveat, I would want them to see both. Are they following good practices, and what are the metrics telling me?
Kind of related to that, David, just a question that I have.
Mhm.
So I'm imagining the things we're not capturing, right? Because there's certain things that happen in the background, say how a project handles a disclosure, for example, it isn't something that we can write down and measure, but there are indicators that over time can give us indications. So if we talk about, let's imagine that we have a project that argues with every vulnerability report that they receive that it's not actually a security bug and they're not going to fix it. Over time, you would imagine that at some point a researcher is going to drop a 0-day, or it's somehow going to be escalated, and you may see a CVE associated with the project. Does the CII best practices badge currently account for it need not be real time, but account for over time the emergence of new vulnerabilities, or is it a static snapshot at the time of evaluation?
Well, let's see here. I guess we very much tried to rig the questions so that we did very much anticipate that thing. The idea was that we're focusing on practices that are over a period of time. Now, it's absolutely true that things change over time. And so, if you were doing something and now you're not, well, per the best practices badge rules, actually no longer have that. Now, we currently don't go back and do automated rechecks. That is something that we actually made steps towards, and we keep threatening people that we'll do that. but I guess it's actually a strategic question. Is with limited resources, what do you focus on first? And for better or for worse, besides just making sure the thing keeps running, we've up to this point we've really focused more on getting projects from not passing to passing. And the code is there, and the intent is there to eventually start doing periodic checks. But there are so many projects which are in just horrifically bad states that we figure right now the risk is the projects which aren't even trying.
Yeah, that makes sense. Or that aren't even aware of the word security.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think a number of people know how to spell it, but but this whole oh, there are tools. Oh, I should do automated testing. Yeah, actually, to be fair, I think we're actually beyond that phrase. I think at this point, many people are aware that there are security tools and they're aware that they should do automated testing, just to pick 2 examples. But awareness is not the same as execution.
I think it's hard, like, to be fair to developers. I mean, even like coming from the security perspective, it's hard to pick the right tools and it's hard to know how they trade off. And sometimes the instrumentation is really complicated. So, I mean, I have compassion for those developers. We from the security side have not made it easy.
Agreed. And
Okay.
actually, let me I just open the kimono a little bit. I've been working with the CII census folks who asked a number of open source developers, basically a survey, hey, what do you need? And one of the, not the top, but one of the higher answers of, hey, what do you want, is basically templates to help them quickly pick appropriate tools. So
Oh, nice.
basically,
So
they're,
kind
they're
of like a decision tree for.
I suspect it's please push this button and my tool selections are made for me.
Interesting. Interesting.
Because they don't want to, they basically, if you give them, here's a document and all you have to do is edit this YAML file, that's too much. Push this button and your security problems are solved. I mean, I'm making a little bit of a fun of that, I guess, but they really do want push this button. They don't want anything complicated. Don't make me read another document, please. I have those.
I think that the
Okay.
only button that does that is the off button of your computer.
Well, and in fact, I don't know if you've seen my edX course. Yeah, it'll handle all serious. I'm making a little fun of it, but I actually do think that they've got an excellent point. Basically, push this button. Here is a proposed YAML file or whatever that will automatically bring in the correct, the reasonable tools, not the correct, reasonable tools. And you can edit, you can change or whatever, but something so they can get started. Now, the problem that I have with that, a concern I have, is if all you get is a tool.
You know what? I don't want to. Sorry to interrupt, but we should.
Sorry.
We should. I know we had some other topics for today too,
Yep.
and so
Agreed.
maybe we should get through the security scorecards, and then maybe stop on this document for today, and then next week we can come back and talk about overlaps and where we want to go. So, Kim, do you want to?
Sure, I'm here. So
okay, great,
I'm not
thanks.
sure if someone copied over, but my stuff linked off to another doc. Maybe I copied it. I'm just letting you know there's a. Oh
right,
yeah,
yeah.
Is.
I copied it over.
Okay.
Do you want to display this one or the link doc?
It doesn't matter. You can click the link doc. It's fine.
Okay.
Similar. So, so this is similar to some of the above use cases for us, but we want something that's completely automatable and only uses objective data. And so we want to make it easy so developers can sort of see every piece of criteria that applies to a project or the maintainers for the projects and be able to check all the boxes, if you will. So everything that we have should be actionable. And then, so we want to give maintainers a way to correct any findings too if we got anything wrong when we essentially scored their projects. And then, like we said in the similar to the last one, is we want to use this data for the securing critical projects working group when we're looking through the top critical projects that people depend on and sort of see where they line up and where they can actually make improvements. And then let's see. So instead of the UI piece, we went from the other direction and have started looking at actually pulling some of this data in and seeing how far we could get. Excuse me. We ran into a couple issues already with, just some of this data just isn't available through like GitHub. We started with GitHub. So for example, there's no way really to query to see if all maintainers or all developers on a project have two-factor auth enabled. So hopefully maybe we can, work with them to see if we could get some more of this data exposed so we can pull that into these tools. And yeah, so we have a demo that we can show if this is a good time. Dan was going to take us through that if he's back. I know he had to step away for a second.
Yeah, I can see if I can figure out how to screen share. I know we had
Okay.
some trouble with that earlier.
I'll stop sharing and see if you can take it from there.
It looks like it's going to work. Let's see. Is it working?
I see yeah, you're good.
Awesome. Yeah, so as Kim talked about, the focus here is really things that we can actually check in an automated fashion, even if they're kind of wild guesses or heuristics or anything like that. As long as the heuristics are well defined and somewhat consistent and in one place and we can all agree on them, then I think that's way better than nothing. So a little Go binary here. We just called it scorecard. Got about 10 or 12 little checks in here now that we can go through. These are things like, does a project use code review? And that's an example of one that needs some heuristics because there's no simple if a project is using code review. So right now we look through a whole bunch of recent pull requests and see if look for signs of a code review. There are about 3 or 4 different code review systems I found in common use on GitHub, so I added support for detecting those. Does a project have more than one contributor? Are they from multiple organizations? GitHub surfaces some of that in the API, so we just kind of crawl through commits of a project looking for who's contributing. A couple of the other ones here are projects using cryptographically signed releases. That's something from the CII best practices as well. There are a whole bunch of different cryptographic signing techniques for releases, so we looked through a couple of those. Do they have a security MD file declaring their vulnerability reporting policies? Are they running tests in CI? Stuff like that are all things that we try to sniff out from a project. Let me put up a terminal and just run this on something. We'll make this bigger. It is a Go binary. We can just kind of run it, either build it and ship it, or use Go run here to iterate on it quickly. If you run it on Kubernetes project, starts all these up. It's got a couple little tricks in here to avoid hitting GitHub API rate limits and caching requests and that kind of thing, but it is running these in parallel. One of the other checks here is whether a project is using some kind of fuzzing platform. So I look for different fuzzing things in the code and then compare it with the OSS fuzz database as well to see if there are fuzzing results. So those are some of the quick ones since we're just looking through the code and don't have to make a couple dozen GitHub API requests. Kubernetes is a huge repo, so this is one of the slower ones.
And so
well,
for
this
fuzzing,
already beats. Oh,
go ahead.
I was going to say this already beats most of the software I've seen. So
Yeah,
that's running is quick.
Yeah, the CI best practices badge, we do go out to the repo and check on some things, but because it's inside the edit loop, you have to between when you save and when it shows you the new edited version, we have serious limits on what we can check.
Yeah. Cool.
It has to be done in seconds, basically.
Right. Awesome. Yeah, so each check here so far gets to return, pass, fail, and then a confidence level. So some of these we can't really tell confidently, so that's a 0. So you kind of toss that out and improve the heuristic. So that sign is for. This is basically what the results look like for a repo. You can point this at anything on GitHub now. I'm well aware it's missing a whole bunch of ways that tests are run and declared and stuff like that, but it's pretty easy to add things.
All right, this is great. So right, you're not focused on, you haven't done anything with the dashboard or storing the data or having an API to access data. So far, sounds like you're just looking at automating the results,
Exactly.
gathering the data. Okay.
Could we just? I mean, we could in theory just populate those into some sort of JSON object or something, right?
Yep.
All right. Anything further you guys wanted to share, Dan and Kim?
I think that is it for now. So yeah, this has been fun. I actually started learning Go playing around with this project, so I think we'll keep iterating on it. Like I said, it would be great if we could get maybe, I don't think anyone from GitHub is here currently. Is anyone? No, but it'd be great to have a conversation with them to see if they have any plans to expose some of the data that I talked about, like seeing if developers have two-factor auth enabled, or I think the other one is protected branches. I don't think there's an easy way to see if projects have that enabled or not. So maybe in a future meeting or something they come, we can chat about that together.
Yeah, that would be super interesting.
Yeah, that's it for us.
Great, thank you. Kay, was there any kind of final message you wanted to share around the comparative requirements and where we're going to take things next?
No, I think, this has been good. This is just, information gathering. And then in our next meeting, I'd like to spend some time just thinking about how because I think there's similar needs and there's some overlap, and it'd be great to think about how we can pull some of this together, or which things we want to, or maybe there's different things that are for different uses. So anyway, we can talk about that next week.
Yeah, there's a lot of overlap from what I've heard today. So I think that doing the work once and being able to call upon it many times is perfect. So I'm glad you pulled this together. Thank you, Kay.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
All right. So going back to the agenda for today, I know that we also had on here the threats, risks, and mitigations document. I think it was Luigi. Was it you that had been working on this?
I have write a markdown version of our document, and there is a pull request on the repo. And now I found the link. 2 seconds. Yes. Here. I have created a pull request. I don't know if it is okay. I hope. If it is okay, we can merge. And I have a question about our document. I don't know. I don't know GitHub so well. So, but could we create document that are accessible to all people, and then include. So sorry. I would like to have documents that are accessible and inclusive, and so I don't know if we have some kind of rules or similar to write in the right way and.
Okay, so you're interested in reaching a wider audience with this document. I guess my question to you would be, what does that look like to you? So right now, there exists, I think, a PDF version of this on the OpenSSF website, and then there's now this markdown version in GitHub. Is it more about having an accessible format and location, like the PDF on the website, or is it more about modifying the document to make it easier for a range of audiences to read?
I don't know if Markdown, PDF, or DocX online can be read by a vocal assistant, for example, and similar. So I don't know if we should think how to make more accessible these documents. I don't know if we should work on this kind of topic.
So I opened the bug, I think, that might have led to this. I opened an issue saying with a suggestion to convert the PDF to Markdown. And at least the reason I opened it was because it would be easier to iterate on. And somebody had left a comment saying that they had done this in another project where the doc itself lived in Markdown and then was kind of compiled into a PDF and docx every once in a while for like a release or a publication of it. But it's much easier for somebody to like fix a typo in the Markdown and send a pull request and get that reviewed and merged than it is to kind of modify the PDF.
Of course. Yes, it is more easier.
Yeah, I like the idea of using Markdown so that we can make it easier to add things to the document and iterate on it over time. Is there further discussion or figuring out that we have to do around this accessibility piece?
Well, I think this can be important for people, and I don't know. I have thought about this when I was writing the Markdown version of our document. So it is only a topic that we can discuss if we want.
So if we're writing it in Markdown, we should be able to take it into some sort of rendering like format that we'll be able to print it in something that's accessible for screen readers. I'd be very surprised if there wasn't a Markdown to screen reader software of some sort.
Well, there usually isn't separate screen reader formats. Usually you generate either PDF or HTML and read it from there. If it's in PDFA, PDFA, it should be fine already for accessibility. That doesn't make it easily editable. But you know, if you can generate HTML, usually screen readers don't have any trouble with HTML. The big problem is the images. You need alt text for each image, and that probably isn't there.
Yes, I have tried to add alternative text to image, but I don't know if it is the best description for the image, and it is not easy.
No.
But
Okay, so maybe in terms of actionable next steps, we could create an issue for if someone wants to create the alt text. And then maybe what we can do is like periodically render, especially if we've made a bunch of recent updates, we can render a new PDF that includes the alt text, and then people will at least periodically have an up-to-date version that would be consumable by a screen reader.
Either PDF or HTML.
Okay.
In fact, we probably should set up a little action. I'm a little afraid to say this because I'm not actually volunteering. So you know, it automatically gets generated, or indeed, if you put it on GitHub as a big Markdown file, it can automatically render it as HTML. You don't have to do anything special. If you just make it a big Markdown file, you're done.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you only get HTML rendering, but I don't remember anything special about that document other than maybe a table of contents. I don't remember it having any special formatting. Can anybody enlighten me?
I don't think there was.
Text and some images and headings is all I remember.
There's certainly some diagrams that would be very hard to articulate as alt text.
Yeah, there's a Visio diagram file in there too.
Yeah, I suspect this is something we can work on incrementally if we want to continue to maintain this document. Yeah, I guess the assumption here seems to be that we're going to be continuing to maintain this document. I wasn't sure. Is that the intent?
It seemed like it. I mean, there's already a version 1 and a version 1.1, so that hints that there might be more. And I think I can't remember what they were now, but I think I saw a couple small typos while I was reading the PDF, which led me to open the issue so I could kind of fix them as I went. And now, of course, I forget where they were.
Yeah. Do we have our the original author on the line here?
Michael, are you able to join in? I think he might be audio only. I know that he had to run an appointment or run an errand today.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll revisit, I guess, the question of maintenance, but I suspect we would. I mean, it's a pretty valuable document, and there's probably things we can add to it over time. I'll make a note in the notes for us to re-ask this question next time. So open question, will we maintain the OSS threats white paper? All right, so we're down to our last 8 minutes. I think our final topic here is the security metrics update, but before diving into that, are there any other final topics that we want to spend a couple of minutes on that I should add here and save time for? All right, so I don't think Michael's available, and I haven't taken a look at what he's done, but he notes here that the project has been Dockerized. You can clone the repo, update a few config files, and run it. So they're still working on the UX and the first set of metrics. So I think there's a few probably loose ends on this, but since we don't have Michael or Ryan, it'll be hard to discuss. From my side, I was going to be doing the documentation of like how we computed each of these metrics, why they matter, and how do we like contextualize them so that as a user, either if you don't understand why a metric matters, or if you contest why a metric matters or how, we can give just some background into how we computed it, why we think of it this way, and then ultimately I'm imagining a later version of this tool would be able to help you reweight certain metrics if you care less about certain ones. So that is something that is open, and I think it's dependent upon defining exactly what this first set of metrics is for the version that will be released. So I think that'll be something we'll have to revisit when we have the broader group, because I'm still waiting on that list as well. But it's great to see the progress that has been made. Is there anything further while we're here that we should discuss around that dashboard or release plans or questions that we want to capture for our next meeting? All right. So I think that we can probably wrap things up here. When we think about next steps for the next time we meet, Kay, how should we, between now and that meeting, think about this requirements document, and what could we have prepared to make that conversation productive next time? Like, should we collect any further data about these? Should we start to map out the overlap, or is this just something that we'll deal with it when we next gather?
Yeah, I was starting to talk, and of course I was muted. So,
oh, okay.
Yeah, so I think we could, if people have time and want to jump in the doc and try to identify, map out. So I think the first thing to do is to identify where there are overlapping goal scenarios and requirements, and then we can talk about where there are differences. That would be my next approach for that. So if people want to jump in and help with that, that's great. Otherwise, that's an action that I can take to have something prepared just as a starting point for discussion. And then I think it will be valuable to get input from the entire group. It shouldn't be an effort that just one person is doing.
That sounds really good. For the white paper, I know we have some open questions. Do we have any action items as well? Like, are we happy with where things landed, or is there something that we should look into prior to next time?
About the Markdown version, the image have a low quality, so maybe we should create them again, so we can have high quality images in the document, because now they are not so good.
Okay.
I can create the diagram, I think, but I don't use Photoshop or similar, and so the new image will be black and white if it is okay.
All right, that sounds good to me. And we'll revisit those open questions next time as well. And for the metrics update, next steps for us would be trying out the project as written. It could be, I guess from Ryan's perspective, further work on the UX. From my perspective, once I have the set of metrics we'll include in the MVP, writing up that documentation. Is there anything else I've forgotten? And I'll capture those things here in the notes. All right, so I think that covers everything we were going to discuss today. Any final comments from the group or things that we want to add to the agenda for next time?
Just one quick question. So Jonathan had asked if we can share this more share this more broadly. Jonathan, are you still on the line?
Share this more broadly with which? I'm trying to remember the context.
I'm sorry. In the notes, I think so. The requirements document is highlighted, and then the question is, can we share this more broadly? So I think the question is, can we share the requirements document more broadly?
Originally, it appeared it had restricted access. Since it's been resolved.
Oh, okay, got it. All right, so I'll close this.
Okay. All right. I think that's everything. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Have a great day, and we will talk in a couple of weeks.
Thanks, Jennifer. Bye, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Take care.